Marvin, eat from that food.
Morvin?
Marvin,
Oh. Why have you named your cat after a member of JLS?
they're my favourite band.
Hmm. As I suspected.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health. For no good reason why, let's call it Mind Cake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another slice of mind cake
Mind cake.
with him,
Lee Crompton. And him,
Paul Beeson.
Paul Beeson. You're looking very ruggy rascal today, my friend.
My hair is inexplicable, isn't it?
Yeah, your
Look at
hair
it.
is very Eraserhead and
It
you're,
is.
you're very stubbly of chin.
I know I've come off tour and I've just become a fucking slob.
Yeah, you do look like you've just slept in your car.
Yeah.
Mm,
Actually, I've been to the gym this morning. That's what I was doing.
mm.
So I got up, went to the gym. So that's why I look like this.
That's why you look like that, because you've been to the gym.
Yeah, yeah. Because like I did my hair this morning and
Mm.
then went straight out to the gym. And obviously, like you're running on the thing and getting all sweaty and that, so my hair's
Mm.
now looks like this.
Do you not have a
It
shower
didn't. It didn't
afterwards?
have time. It didn't have time to set as
To
it would normally.
bouffon. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what I've been doing my morning. What have you been doing with your morning, Mucker?
Do you really want to know what I'm doing in my morning?
Well, unless it's too profane for
No, 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 no.
pod.
I have had an ADHD assessment
Oh yeah.
for 3 hours.
Oh mate,
So I'm
that
quite
must have been
tired.
dry. That must have been driving you mental with your ADHD and
It
everything.
was, well, I don't know, I haven't been fully diagnosed yet, but
Well, we all know. We all know.
well, I think it's a split decision. I think there's those who go, "Well, no, I don't see it at all," and there's others who go, oh yes, you
Yeah.
definitely have it.
What did you have to do for 3 hours? It seems like a long time.
You had to talk about just your lifestyle, your mannerisms, your childhood, what you're like in relationships, what you're like in your job, your pastimes, your hobbies. So we'll wait and see. I think there's an awful lot that resonated. Equally, there are a few things that didn't. So one of the questions, for example, was in my childhood, was I particularly, or even now, am I particularly impulsive or risk taking? I would say no, I'm not either of those things. I tend to sort of, plan and attention to detail, kind of work my way through things rather than just impulsively making a decision on things or climbing a tree a little bit too high or whatever. I didn't, was fairly well behaved as a kid. And so certain things I'm like, I think I'm supposed to answer yes to tick that box, but there's no point in fibbing. I mean, it's not a test.
No,
It's
of
not. It's
course.
not a pass or fail test. I'm just trying to find out a bit more about myself. And like I say, I'm not doing it for any other reason than there's been, yeah, Dr. Jan, I think, is in the. I think you, yeah, maybe need to. Might be interesting for you to get tested. Gemma, my wife, I think also, yeah, I think. But then you've had other people who know me well have gone, oh no, not at all. But then I think I've
Hmm.
had 50 odd years of deflecting with humor, and I think unless you know me particularly well, I mean, I would say I've picked up a lot editing this podcast in terms of me listening and me. I mean, how many times have I had to, when I'm editing myself, when I've thought of a question and a third of the way through that question, I've gone off at a tangent and thought of another question, and then by the time I get to
Yeah.
the end of, you know, as a snake kind of slithering through the desert from cactus to cactus, and by the time I get to the end, it's either I don't know what the original question was, or it's four questions rolled into one.
Hmm.
So I think it would be quite interesting going forward to have somebody on about ADHD, because I always thought it was just people who couldn't sit still and were a bit fidgety.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the tangents that you go off at is, I mean, because you
Legendary
are
is
very
the word you're looking for.
Yeah, no, but you're so meticulous in planning a lot of stuff, especially around this podcast. And then when you plan all your questions and stuff, and you have like reams of paper with loads of questions on it, and then as soon as you ask your first question, that's gone out the fucking window, hasn't it? And then
I don't know.
because you've gone off on a tangent, then you're like, right, how do I get back into this?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
Things
you
are
go off in
things are
another
then out of
direction.
sequence.
Yeah, yeah. So you do a lot of meticulous planning, but then as soon as you start
It all goes to
podcasting,
rat
then just
shit.
goes.
Mm, yeah.
But that's fun. That's what makes the podcast what it is. It's all part of the experience, isn't it?
That is why we have 5 whole listeners.
Woo!
Mhm.
That's why our loyal fan base keeps coming back.
Absolutely.
They love
Absolutely.
your tangents.
They like my tangents and they love your hair, even though they can't see it. They can imagine it.
You can imagine the.
Like, I'm gonna have to take a screenshot today. That is even by your standards, Paul.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's happening?
To even things out, we've had an episode with the wonderful Swales,
We did, yeah. I really enjoyed that episode.
which turned out to be, I feel, more about Mother Nature and looking after the planet, and rather than hubble bubble, toil and trouble. However, our guest today, but in the interest of balance, is she's editor of the Skeptic Magazine, I think, which tells you all you need to know about today's guest, Deborah. So, without further ado, let's get right into skepticism. Today, we are privileged and honoured to have Deborah Hyde, editor of the Sceptic Magazine, with us. How are you, Deborah?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Lee?
I'm very well. I thought it'd be timely to get you on in this time of Halloween and folklore, and there's a new moon next week. I didn't even know there was 12 moons. Sometimes 13. I thought there was
Sometimes
like a couple
13.
a year.
Oh, right. No, there's you get 13 a year in a long year, don't
Apparently
you?
so. I've only just found that out in the last couple of months, and I'm 50. I've been half a century on the planet, and I only just found that out. But anyway, as the title of your magazine would suggest, you study supernatural belief and folklore, but you're not necessarily a believer.
Yes, no, I don't believe at all. And it's an interesting perspective because it's become sort of respectable over the last, I would say, 10 or 20 years in academia. I'm not an academic, but I have many friends who are. And in academia, they thought that you were being a bit frivolous if you spoke about all this stuff about ghosts and things like that. So there were people who had a passion for it, but had to have it as a second string to their bow. People like Sue Blackmore, for example, who did a lot of really pioneering work in this stuff. And these days, people like Professor Chris French. And it's become, I think people have realized that it's a valid area of study because people do believe in these things, and they have believed in them through most of human history. Therefore, you can't just write it off as being frivolous or silly. And you don't have to believe in it to think, cool, that's interesting that people come up with these things time and time again. That must say something about how human beings work. So I think that that's the element that we come at from.
Okay, well, do you want to start by telling us a little about what you do and how you, how did you what led you down that path?
I think most people who are going to get into the supernatural do it at a very early age. It kind of just grabs you. It's one of those things, and it's one of those things that gives you a thrill. It gives you a frisson. And I love watching the films and reading the books and all that kind of thing. But obviously, that's just entertainment. I think I started out as a believer when I was a kid, and you just try and consume everything you can on the subject. And the more I read, the more I realized that it was actually a systematic way of thinking, although probably not accurate. So I read a book called The Black Arts by a guy called Richard Cavendish when I was about 12 or 13. I shouldn't have really, I was a bit young for that. But I realized that the attempt at magic was an attempt at sort of having a systematic understanding of the universe and how to manipulate it. And the kind of philosophy and the efforts that people were making with magic really fed into the scientific revolution, because it was about, systematic forces that you could control in a systematic fashion. So I think from that book, I started just reading more and more. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I didn't really believe in anything, but I was still fascinated by the subject.
Wow. Okay. So why do you think in the 21st century we still have this belief in ghost stories and that sort of phenomena?
It's very fashionable at the moment, isn't it? I mean,
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I'm one of the resident experts on the BBC podcast Uncanny sometimes. That when we do tours and things like that, I mean, goodness, the number of people that turn up at theatres and want to see this as entertainment, and the vast majority of them are believers as well. So it's really going through a phase. Broadly, there are two ways of looking at it. One of them is to say that this kind of belief is adaptive, so that it helps people. And there's something to that. But quite often it makes your life worse as well as making your life better. Because if you can believe in the comfort of a god, for example, well, demons and vampires aren't very comforting, and people have believed in those too. So, so these kinds of beliefs are as disturbing as they are comforting. The other way of looking at it is coming at it from a different angle, and to say that these are accidental byproducts of a normal working human brain. And that's the kind of thing that they really concentrate on in anomalistic psychology. And if you like anomalistic psychology, you should buy the Science of Weird Shit by Professor Chris French, because he goes into all this stuff.
Okay.
So just to take a couple of examples, your memory isn't very good, for example. We don't record like digital devices do. We remember things that are important and in a certain way, and our memories tend to get sort of rounded off and optimized. So if you get three people see something and they talk amongst themselves, and by the time they're telling the story a week later, it will be very different to the original thing. The other thing is that we are very good at detecting what's called agency in our environment. So if you jump, might not be anything, might just be something falling over, but it's better for you if you assume, at least for a little while, that it might be something intelligent that's out to get you, because your ancestors did that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So there are all sorts of things that a normal cognitive system does, and creating a world with supernatural agents in it could be just an accidental byproduct of that. And it doesn't cost anything. So it's just sort of stayed with us.
Yeah, and like you were saying, I suppose there's two things, isn't there, to that? There's the, well, going by your werewolves and horror and whatever, there's some people seek out that fear for fun through whether it be horror films or haunted attractions, and other people might find, so you could say that's a positive. I'm not entirely sure why it's a positive and why people do that. Some people seek out that fear, and other people are, like you say, get comfort from, whether they believe in people who've passed on still being with us, or some sort of spirits or whatever. I don't know, but I mean, going to the first bit, what is it psychologically, I guess, that some people seek out fear for, let's say, entertainment
Purposes? Yeah. Well, given that I'm one of them, I suppose I should have a really good insight on it. I don't know, but I think it's probably having that excitement in a controlled environment. So I probably wouldn't be all that happy if you dumped me in a cage with a tiger, which would also be very exciting, but not
uncontrolled.
Yes, very uncontrolled. Whereas I can watch a movie about the supernatural, and I mean, it's just titillating and thrilling, but it's also very controlled. And funny enough, there's an awful lot of people also like to read things about serial killers and go to go to exhibitions with serial killers, and I find the difference is very important because I can't find that so entertaining because it really happens. So I can't enjoy that for entertainment's sake, whereas I can enjoy demons because I don't believe in them, but I know that they're a potent source of kind of thrill for fictional purposes.
You know, I'd never thought of that because I would be. This probably not putting myself in a good light here, but I would say
Go ahead anyway.
I'm gonna. It's not with the first time on this podcast. I would say I'm the other way round. Supernatural films, like you say, is entertainment and whatever. They can stay with me, particularly supernatural, can stay with me for weeks afterwards. Like I get this feeling of disassociation, and I really don't cope well with some particular types of horror film. However, if there's a documentary on, I don't know, is it Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah.
I would say I find it entertaining, but I find it interesting from a
Oh,
human
yeah.
psychology point of view as to what the background was and what led them to do the things they did. So I find that, I wouldn't say entertaining, but interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. For interest purposes, yes.
Ah,
I was interested in Jack the Ripper at one point, and I ended up
mhm.
learning an awful lot about Victorian social history through it.
Yeah,
And that's, yeah, and also it's got the mystery. It's like a conspiracy theory because they never actually found out who it was for
no,
certain. So, yeah, I think it's interesting, but it's not entertaining. It's not like going to a country dance or a fairground or eating candy floss or anything, is it? It's a different kind of stimulation.
yes, very much so, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, have you got? Do you watch a lot of horror films?
Yeah, I like horror films and I like all the classics and I love the Guillermo del Toro ones. If since you're afraid of horror films, I would say to you, if you're going to watch any of them, these are the ones that are worth watching because they're not gratuitous and because the very often the horrific creatures are the ones most deserving of sympathy. It's a bit like a Frankenstein story.
Hmm.
So your targets for pity and for anger tend to be unpredictable,
Hmm.
and you've got the raising of tension with the direction, but it isn't someone's head being sawn off or something just sort of gross and unpleasant like that. I think Guillermo del Toro is a real artist, and I really like his stuff.
So they're your favorite.
Yes, I think so. I think
Okay.
I like loads of them. I mean, there's all the classics, you know. I think The Exorcist was a major piece of art, and The Wicker Man is fantastic. And there was a one recently that had real vibes of the Wicker Man, actually. It wasn't a supernatural horror, but it was a kind of it was a psychological horror. And I'm just looking it up as yeah, Speak No Evil, starring James McAvoy.
Oh,
And that
okay.
had, if you enjoyed The Wicker Man, you'll love this.
Speak no evil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you ever religious? Did you grow up Catholic or anything?
No, I would. I don't know why I'm laughing. I went to Sunday school,
Hmm.
even though none of our family were religious. Now, I don't know whether my mum does listen to the podcast. Mum, if you're listening, was it just free childcare on a Sunday morning for a couple of hours? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
why I went to Sunday school, but no, I wouldn't say I was religious. No.
All right. Because a lot of people who can't really cope with horror films, I find that they've sort of they started out with quite religious backgrounds and they've let them go. And I think it might be a subconscious worry that they've joined the wrong team, you know.
Ah.
They get nervous of being reminded about the supernatural things,
Yes, it
but not
is
with
this
everybody.
thinking about it. This is the supernatural that gets to me. One of I would say my favorite has to be The Shining.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen Us?
No, I haven't. Was it
Mm.
good?
I liked it for no other reason than the performances where they're playing their own doppelganger.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like
Mm.
you have those in folklore. You've got doubles, and they're called fetches in Celtic folklore. And if you see your own, it could be a sign of impending death. But if you scold it and tell it to go away, then you can avoid it. So,
Well, I think
uh,
that's the thing. There's a lot of folklore, I think, attached to that film, and it tries to address many different things. It's all it gets a bit confused at one point because it's trying to do this hands across America thing, and there's a lot of imagery where there's symmetry. So there's a lot of like scissors,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the cusp of my. I wouldn't want anything more distressing than that. That's probably my limit. Is us.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that sounds like it for your wife's sake, if nothing else, you should probably not go further into the horror film thing because the nightmares you might end up sort of shouting out in the middle of the night. That would disturb her, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember watching Poltergeist as a child.
Yeah.
That absolutely terrified me. There's a bit where there's maggots in the sink or something all come out, and I was like, I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I read the Amityville Horror, the book, and there was a bit there where the guy went down to the sort of boathouse attached to the house and he looked back and he could see a pig with glowing eyes
Oh,
back
Jesus.
at one of the windows. And I was just transfixed with fear. I mean, it was like it was midnight or something. I couldn't get up for a week because I was too
Hmm.
scared to move. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there are these things really stay with you.
Yeah, which again goes back to my original question: why would you do that to yourself? But there you go. One thing we did talk about, and there's a full moon coming up on Wednesday, I think, and I did say to you, well, maybe we should talk about the moon because of superstitions and what have you. I'm interested in that because my uncle was a big burly police officer,
Mhm.
and he used to tell stories of how in the West Midlands police force they used to like draw lots on who was going to do the full moons because all the lunatics came out. And I've also heard stories from teachers, including my mother-in-law, who's like, you could always tell when it was a full moon because the kids go a little bit bonkers. And I suppose my love of Harry Potter, I'm thinking full moons are associated with werewolves. But from what you're saying, that's not necessarily the case.
No, I'm not particularly. I mean, the I think an awful lot of this is fictional, you know, people picked it
Mm,
up. People where, you know, astronomy, our decent understanding of the heavens and physics came via astrology, and people were looking into the heavens, and there was clearly things that did make a difference. I mean, the moon affects tides; it's observable. So they didn't realize that, you know, perhaps Jupiter and Saturn didn't affect us as much temperamentally, and so I think it took a long time to work out, and science went through this, and I think that medicine. I'm just thinking of Robert Burton with the Anatomy of Melancholy, which would have been the 16th, 17th century, would have been talking about the phases of the moon and the effect it would have had on people's health and their temperament. So I think that that's kind of, you know, late magic, early science attempts to put, you know, to attach some mechanistic attachment to the moon, between the moon and humans. And probably with folklore, look, you can go out and you can see everything on a full moon. So if there was no light, then people wouldn't have gone out at night and would have been unlikely to have ambiguous or supernatural experiences. So it's in general. I mean, there is so much folklore to do with moons, and, you know, moon goddesses, Selene, and all this kind of thing. So that people do have mystical associations with the moon, but the idea that, you know, as regular as clockwork, a werewolf comes out at a full moon is probably more derived from fiction than it is from sort of witch hunting records.
and I take it you don't think that there's a correlation between people's behavior and full moons?
I don't think so. No, no.
Okay.
I think probably if you did double blind studies and they were well controlled, and, you know, all of that kind of thing, you'd probably find that people are noticing things at times that are significant to them.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
not actually very good at kind of being impartial about the world. You need
No.
experiments to do that. No.
I saw that you were on, I don't watch daytime television. Is it This Morning?
Yeah, I did a few of those. Yeah.
Did a few of those. One in particular that stood out was they had George Best's wife on,
Yes.
and she was convinced she was being haunted by George. And I just thought, for listeners intrigued by the paranormal, but mindful of their mental health, what sort of questions do you think they should be asking themselves if they feel that they had a ghostly or a spirit experience?
Well, this is kind of an interesting question to ask someone like me, who is the resident killjoy at any of these sessions. So, because I think a lot of the time, George Best's wife, was her name Angie? No, oh no, she was much earlier. Yeah. Anyway, the lady that I did the interview with was actually very nice and perfectly sane, and it was nice talking to her. So this doesn't apply to her, but an awful lot of people who you end up going up with for the purposes of debates or for TV sessions
Yeah.
might be a bit vulnerable, and I'm quite keen now to make sure that people aren't, because it hadn't occurred to me before, but they can be, they can be in the middle of a crisis and be very, very fixated on a subject. And for UFO people, for example, a lot of UFO people really, really get into it, and they can be quite sort of shaky and unhappy by the time they come off the stage. So it's interesting to be able to, to be able to actually draw that line to say, no, this person shouldn't really be dropping themselves in it potentially when they're at a bit of a delicate stage in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I would say that the vast majority of people who have strange experiences, there's nothing wrong with their mental health at all. It's perfectly natural, it's perfectly human to have bizarre experiences. And there are lots of explanations for why this may be the case. So I didn't think she was sort of emotionally challenged at all. I think she'd lost her husband, she'd had a few spooky experiences, and she believed in ghosts, and lots of people do, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm. I guess, like you say, you're in sticky territory, and I'm sure you're very, very compassionate and not blunt with them. But I can imagine, because I mean, take her for example, she was saying that things had moved, like heavy chests of drawers that would take three people to lift
Yeah,
had moved, and she could tell by the marks in the carpet. And you're there saying, I don't think that actually happened. So, without putting too fine a point of it, you're going, well, I think you've A, either made it up, or B, are just a little
got it
bit
wrong.
got it wrong. And people
Yeah,
don't like being told that they're, I'm not saying you're saying she's a liar, but
yeah,
people don't like being challenged in that way, because I suppose they're entrenched in, well, I did see it,
yeah,
and the furniture did move, and I did see a ghostly figure past the window or whatever it is.
yeah,
And so I can see how I'm thinking of sort of a Nicky Campbell type debate show in particular, where you've got very entrenched views on one side and the other. And I
yeah.
can imagine it. Have you ever come across there where it has got a little bit
I
frisky
have
debates?
in one of those Nicky Campbell type shows, and I think he's an incredibly good referee. I think he's really very good at giving everybody the time that they need, and treating everybody respectfully. In the green room, in one of those, I ended up having a conversation with a couple of women, and I think they felt that they were being accused of being stupid.
Mm,
And I said to them, I said, honestly, no one thinks you're stupid. I mean, if this is the first time that anyone has encountered the idea that they might be wrong without being weak-minded, then it
mm,
might be a bit of a shock to them.
yeah.
But if they went into the subject a bit more and they realized that there are experiments, well-controlled experiments, and loads of them, which demonstrate that we're all really good at getting things systematically wrong, then they would probably feel that it was aimed less personally.
Mm. We're full of ambiguity, and going back to what you said earlier about people misremembering or coming up with you've seen the same thing, coming up with completely different versions of the same event, because we pick and choose. I mean, again, I'm pulling figures at my bum here, but I think the eye, I read something that the eye takes in however million pieces of information every second. And of that, we recognize 30.
Yeah,
So there's a lot going on. And that's why apparently you could. So if you're doing something else, I could be talking to you now, and somebody two doors down could go Lee, and my brain goes, because it's picked out that one bit of
Yes.
information that I need for either survival or what instinct or whatever you want to call it. But by virtue of that, if we're only getting a small percentage of our reality at any one moment, it's pretty logical that what we take in and what we understand is a small percentage of what is actually happening in reality. I mean, an example I've got is that my my wife was driving. We live out quite rural, in a rural location, and she was driving back one night, and she witnessed a car that had driven into a ditch.
Mm.
And she got home and she rang the police to say that she'd seen this car, and it's a white car, and she gave the location, rough location of where the car was, and they sent the police out and they couldn't find it. However, about a mile up the road in a completely different location, they found a black car that had driven off the road. And what they rang my wife back to check, did you mean this car? Or are we still looking for another white car that's further up the road? And it turned out, no, she completely misremembered the location and even the color. It was like black and white, a completely different color.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that was because it was dark or, you've only seen a flash of it, whatever. But I suppose it's a really rubbish example of the fact that what we think we see isn't necessarily what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody a couple of doors down shouted out "knee" as well, you'd probably look around at that because there's enough information in there
Mm,
for you to just recognize it.
yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be perfect. Modern models of how we recognize things reckons that there are two elements to it. We don't have the working bandwidth to sample our whole environment at 25 frames a second
Yeah.
and to record it all. And you've already pointed that out. So to a degree, we take in a lot of information from around us, and we specifically take in information that's changed. So if something's moving fast, for example, you're not going to sort of stare at the piece of furniture in the corner that doesn't move. You're probably not going to take a lot of processing time on that. And at the same time, we have models already installed in our brain of what we should be expecting. And so that's top-down information. That's the stuff that you're expecting. It meets your perceptions coming up, and they kind of meet in the middle and they make a mashup. So if you were living somewhere where there were big cats, you'd probably do a double take and expect a jaguar, for example, if you were in South America. But of course, if you were on holiday somewhere where there were lions, you might for a moment think, oh, jaguar, and of course it's a lion, just because that's that works with your software. So this is going to be part of your environment, part of your expectation. So a lot of people think that a condition called sleep paralysis leads towards strange experiences. But it'll be culturally specific as to what you think's happened to you. Some people think that there might be some old hag who's trying to throttle you. Some think that there's some kind of randy demon coming to try and seduce you, and some think they're being abducted by aliens. And it kind of depends on your cultural software as to how you interpret this really quite well understood biological experience.
So with the new moon rapidly approaching, what you're saying is there is nothing to see here. We're all going to be okay.
I can't guarantee that because you might fall in a ditch. So there are the
But
same,
not because of the moon.
No, there are the same dangers there ever were. You could get mugged, you could fall into a ditch, you could walk into someone's wing mirror, but you're as likely as ever to get attacked by a werewolf.
Yeah,
which is
I
a
think
very low likelihood indeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess again, something I'd not thought of before. Again, there won't be any surprise to you on the basis that I only thought there was 2 full moons a year. There might be a correlation between, like you say, the full moon and the light, and the trick of the light, I guess,
Yeah.
is
And the
more.
fact that traditionally people would be out. We've only had lights in the street for the last, few decades. The idea that the whole world would be completely illuminated whenever you want it is very, very modern. So I guess people would only go out and be able to see things at full moons.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a beaver moon, whatever that is, on
What?
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, they've got all sorts of names for them, harvest moons and everything. I don't know what
Mm,
they all are.
no. Okay. Deborah, thank you so much for coming on. I know this is obviously a very busy time with you, with all the folklore and mysticism that's going on at this time of year. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
It's been good to talk.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm away to do my homework now with James McAvoy.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, I wish you a very happy Halloween.
And a happy Halloween to you too.
Well, that was Deborah.
That was Deborah. And what did you think of that, Paul? Because I know you love the old, mysticism and
I
the.
do.
Mm,
I do love all the old the mysticism and the paranormal and all that kind of stuff,
mm,
spirituality. However, I mean that's kind of my interest in that is sparked from a I'm kind of like X-Files, Mulder and Scully,
mm,
right? I'm definitely like a Fox Mulder. Like I want to believe, I want to see some, but I have no tangible proof of a lot of stuff, the stuff that
mhm.
I like to believe in. But I'm just really interested in it all. I've got nothing against skeptics, of course, because I mean you're very skeptical, right? You're the Dana Scully.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't. I have crystals on my desk, for example. Do I
Mm.
think they're really doing anything? Probably not. But they're quite nice to look at, and they're not doing any harm. So
And if Kay from Kay's Crystals is listening, he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it.
I don't mean it, and I'll see you in Knutsford in a few weeks. Don't hold it
You
against
and
me.
Luxford.
She won't be
Um,
listening. It's fine.
yeah, but I think I'm sort of on the fence. Do you know what I mean? So like, I am open to stuff like that, the sort of more mystical side of life,
Mm.
and I would love to see some kind of evidence of that. But I'm not like an outright non-believer. Like, nah, it's all horseshit because I'd rather be a glass half full kind of guy. Do you know what I mean? Be
Mm.
optimistic and be open to that rather than just dismiss it outright.
I think you can be a half glass empty if it's just a load of nonsense, though. That's fine.
Yeah, but
Um,
until you, yeah, whatever.
like Hearts winning the league.
Aye, it could happen, mate. It could happen. 9 points clear now.
Mm. We're running out of time already.
Oh, Jesus. Well,
Mm.
it's only a quick bookend this week, isn't it, Lee? This episode, I should say.
Yes, it is.
Because we've
I'm
got
very
stuff to do, Mucker. We've got stuff to do, places to go, people to see.
well. Well, that's a good segue into what are you going to do this afternoon?
I've got a few things to do actually. So I've got some admin.
No, 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 no,
The
no,
this,
not the fucking admin. We got time to talk about the admin.
oh,
What are
all
you
right. Well,
doing
I'm
this
just
afternoon that relates to the previous episode?
Jesus. All right. I'm going out for a walk, get my nature on, and I'm going to do a bit of grounding. I'm gonna go down to the sea because I live near the sea, and I'm going to go and do some grounding on the beach. Grounding, not grinding. Grounding on the beach.
No, nobody had thought of that other than you, Paul. Again, I don't want to be pedantic. It's not in my nature to be pedantic about these things.
Of course not.
However, is it grounding if it's on the beach, or is it just walking barefoot along the beach?
But your feet are in contact with the ground, with
I know,
nature, with
I get that.
natural sand,
Yeah, no, I get that,
right?
but I always thought the grounding, I don't know why, but always imagined grounding like walking in grass, whereas walking along the beach is just having a walk along the beach.
But do you know what?
You take your shoes and socks off, don't you?
For balance, I'll stand on the beach for a bit, and
Mm.
then I'll go and stand on the grass for a bit, and I'll
Yes,
compare the
see if
two
it feels different.
experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
do
I'll
that.
come back to you.
Thanks. If you wouldn't mind.
What are you doing?
I'd probably just go for a snooze. Knackered. Bye.
What a way to finish.
As always, take care of yourself, be kind to others, and in the words
Yep.
of Dr. Jan,
Don't be a dick.
thank you for listening.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Fine